we're going to look at SUNYCreate, and I'm going to put in the chat the address. It's just sunycreate.cloud. I think it's already there, but now it's up on the screen. And so just go there. And when you go there, you're going to log in using your Oswego authentication. And I'm going to go there as well, because once you create an account, I have to approve it to give you editing rights. And that'll just take a couple of seconds. So what you're going to do first is go to the get started. Click on the get started. The interface has changed since I last looked at this last year when I did a workshop on this. Click on get started. And I suppose we should talk a little bit while you're doing this about what this is about. SUNYCreate basically is an instance, a system-wide instance of the domain of your own project that came out of originally Murray Washington University, and then was spun off as a project called Reclaim Hosting. And Reclaim Hosting is a company that provides low-cost hosting services for campuses and individuals. I have my own account that I use because I've got about 8 domains that I use for various purposes, but you can do the same thing through here. The first thing you're going to be asked to do is to, once you log in, well, we'll get to that in a second. Let everyone get to that point. Click on select your campus at Oswego, fill in your name, and you can type anything there because I'm going to be the one approving it anyway.
Looks like it filled it in already.
Oh, it did. Okay.
Yeah, so just
good.
Build a site for a course.
So
choose that.
Okay, and then once you fill in all the information, you can just click submit, and then it's going to go to me, and I'm going to approve it on the back end, and that's just going to take a couple of seconds. And now I'm having trouble connecting.
I know, it seems a little slow today.
So I have an admin account, so I get a slightly different interface.
I just submitted mine.
Okay, it's just going to take me a little bit to get it approved.
Okay, that's really weird. Look at the name at the top. It says Jay Harris, but then it says Jessica Howdy.
Right, yeah, it's picking up your name from the SUNY directory thing. But what happens is, because this works with any SUNY campus, it started off with an IITG proposal from SUNY Oneonta, SUNY Oswego, and
my last name
GCC, and well, and a couple of others. Yeah, so it's using your net ID, I believe.
Well, it says Jessica Howdy. My last name.
Yeah, I think the howdy is it saying hello.
Oh, okay.
Because mine says howdy, Linda.
I'm like thinking it's
Yes.
like last name, comma,
So-
first name. That's what it was like.
Look at cowboy there.
That's my last name.
So
It's third. So,
so okay, this will just take a second. I'm in the process of approving people in the background. And what I have to do is change each person's role. This was just so we get a little bit of control so it doesn't explode, so that we can make sure that people who are doing it there we go. So now Jessica should be changed. You should have permission to access the dashboard.
Okay.
And then I should have asked people to do this in advance. And then let me get everybody else here.
okay, cool.
The search is pretty slow, so. I'm not sure if it's our network or if it's Reclaim Hosting, but there we go. Okay, here we go. Okay, Linda's is going to be changed now. just not very responsive. Normally people would do this. I get notification of this by an email, and then I'd make the change. So you wouldn't have to be waiting, and I should have done that before. So I'm changing you from a contributor to an author, so you'll actually be able to create things. And Greg, be there in just a second. And what happens basically is you're getting access to a Reclaim hosting server. So it's basically the same type of thing that a business would have, or the same type of thing anyone renting server space would have, with a wide variety of tools. And it comes with a lot of tools active. Okay. I'm still searching for you, Greg. And again, it's just really, really slow today. This gets a little tedious when someone like Rebecca brings in all of her class, all of the students in her class, which has happened. So now you should all now be authors, which means you have your own server space. One of the first things you have to do, though, once you have that, is to create a username. And if this part is probably the most critical decision you're going to make today. And so be careful in doing it, because once you do it, you cannot change it without intervention from Reclaim hosting. So it can be done, but think of a domain that you might want to use. The end of it is going to be SUNYCreate.cloud, but you could use your name if you're going to use it with a specific class and only that class. Oh, how did you get to that page?
I just clicked dashboard.
Okay.
Once I submitted the form, it was waiting, and then I just clicked dashboard. Once he had said he did it, yeah.
And you should all now have that access. Everyone have that?
I don't know what to do.
So you could
Just
call
my
it
name?
Jessica Harris, for
Okay.
example,
I'll just do
or you could call it, you could, I made the mistake of using Oswego Micro, and then it cuts off
cuts
everything
out.
after Oswego. And so it's Oswego MI. But I'm actually not using mine for anything because I already had my own account with a lot more space than these have. Although basically there is a soft restriction on the space, but right now, this is something which is, there's two restrictions. We have a fixed amount of total server space and a fixed number of total users. So we're below that maximum, and the amount of storage that SUNY has was doubled this past year. This was initially funded by a SUNY IITG grant. It went up for renewal and expansion, and it made it through the approval process back in 2020, and then the budget was cut. But for the next year, SUNY Oneonta used its OER budget and funded it for the rest of SUNY. And since then, SUNY OER Services has taken this over. And so far, it's working really nicely. Now that you have your server, why does it have to sign up again?
I don't know.
Try the dashboard again. And it should take you back. Well, maybe try sign up. This is a new interface. This was not the one that was there when I last used this, the last time I gave this workshop. It's being updated and improved as we go.
Jeez Louise, it's not moving. There it goes. Congratulations, your domain is ready to go.
Okay,
So
it's going to,
email.
once you pick that name, it's going to redirect you to a dashboard, which is the same sort of dashboard you'd see if you rented domain space from pretty much anybody. And in particular, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to get to your cPanel. And cPanel is basically an installer that lets you install any applications that you want. The ones that are on the top are the most commonly used ones throughout Domain of the Own, throughout institutions that use Domain of Your Own. And there's lots of institutions that use it. We can just go through some of the main things. WordPress by far is the most commonly used application. You could use that to create websites. Something like 40% of all the websites out there on the web are hosted on a WordPress site. So you can create websites, we could use blogs, you could do you could do anything that you could do with a website using the WordPress tools. And that's the one we're probably going to explore the most. Omeka is a database which is used for collections. It's used, for example, at the Fashion History Timeline at FIT, where students will go in and they'll take pictures, or they'll have images of historic fashions, and they'll write up something about how these fashions evolved. They'll put them in a cultural and historical context, for example. It's used by lots of libraries for their archives. It's used for digital storytelling projects. It's used for archaeological collections and so forth, where you're going to have items that have tags that are searchable. It's used by National Archives, for example, for some of their collections. So Omeka is a really good tool if you have items that you want to classify that have images or music or videos or other things that you want to be searchable by tags and so forth. Lots of historical societies use it, and museums. GRAV, I'm not, to be honest, I forgot what that one is. It's not used as often. If you click on it, I think it will tell you a little bit about it. Oh, it's a flat file CMS. So it's basically a content management system. It's a basic web platform, but it's far less common to use. So back out of that, just hit the back button or go to the,
The apps.
yeah, just hit the back button or go to, yeah, there we go. And Scalar is a semantic web type thing. It's, we have one person here who uses it very extensively in the English department, whose name completely escapes me. We did a podcast with her about 6 years ago on this. But Scalar basically is something which is often used in digital storytelling. It's an interface where you create text or images that are linked to other text or images that can then be linked together with certain pathways. So essentially, you can build digital stories where people can choose their own adventure, where they can choose to branch in different directions. Or you could, for example, in the English class that was used here, and I feel really bad, I can't remember her name. She went to Canada. She's at the University of Toronto now, I believe.
Fiona.
Yeah, Fiona, of course.
Yes,
Fiona,
I missed her.
Fiona used, oh yeah, she was wonderful. Fiona uses quite a bit in some of her classes where she took some public domain, a public domain book that was written by an author in Oswego, and she had students annotate it, where they added images of some of the places that were there, links to history of some of the places, images of places that were cited and so forth. And you can link to other information. So it's a really flexible system. There's a little bit of a learning curve to it, but it's a really powerful tool if you want people to annotate text, for example, or create stories with multiple pathways. And so those are the most common applications. But if let's just scroll down through, there's a lot of domain tools where you can create add-on domains. So you can have other domains connected to this. You can create aliases. If you have your own domain name, you could replace the name that you just created with a different name.
Oh, cool.
So you don't get stuck with that SUNYCreate.cloud and so forth. So you can alias another domain if you buy the rights to that domain, which could be really handy. You could create subdomains, which are domains that fall under this, which just adds another name to that whole directory for the whole web address. But you could combine that with aliases to get them more directly. There's file manager tools and so forth. These are tools to manage the data there, which most of the time you don't really need to do. There's a GitHub application there. So you can create your own storage document for coding and so forth. There's backup wizards. You can create FTP accounts to be able to upload or download things. It has all the standard database tools, all pre-configured. It has lots of metrics you can add onto your site. It has some nice security features. So you can use, secure socket layer and so forth, and for any of the sites you manage. And the nice thing about this, and if we just scroll through quickly, there's some more advanced tools that you can add. And actually go way back up to the top and click at all. You could run Drupal from here. You could run, for example, Moodle. You can install a Moodle instance and actually run it from here. Now, you wouldn't want to create a very large one because you'd use up all the storage space for SUNY, and probably someone would ask what you were doing, but you could build your own learning management system right in one of these accounts. And some people have, and they've used it for small applications at some of their institutions. And it's a great way for people who might be going into web management, or who are doing web design. And that's how Rebecca has used it for her web design class, for students basically to build things like a business website with all these tools. There are digital commerce tools. If you click on right below all applications, you'll see a full list of installable applications.
Where is that?
Right down below and over to the right just a little, where it says all applications, right to the right of Scalar, below Omeka. Up,
Oh,
getting colder, down,
Wait, don't even see.
down to the left
To
a
the
little
left?
bit, and right straight down, right an inch to the right on your screen.
all
Yes, all applications. It's so much easier to
Sorry.
say it when you're
Yeah.
not actually doing it. But here's some other things that are available. All those things that, these things that are CMS things at the top, those are overlays to WordPress for custom purposes. TrueWriter basically is a set of writing tools that you can add to WordPress, which is basically just a bundle of plugins and add-ons that are all pre-configured. And there is PressBooks, but the thing is, if you try installing it from here, it's not going to work very well because it relies on some older things that are not by default installed. You have to revert to earlier things. But there is a SUNY instance of PressBooks, which will allow you basically, so you can try installing. To be honest, I did try installing it because PressBooks basically is a book creation platform that will create books in a format which are accessible and that can be exported to Kindle or to PDFs or any other source. I've had my students use that for the last 4 years to actually create books, but I was doing it on PressBooks.com because it was free for just hosting a small one. And then if you paid $100 or so, or $95, you were able to get much more storage space, and then you had the ability to export it without watermarks. Because if you use a free account, you were limited. For many student projects, it would be more than sufficient. But what happened is PressBooks.com changed its hosting plan last August. And now, instead of being a one-time payment to make that book active, they're charging by the month, which is something like $30 or $40 per book every month. And I've got 4 books already up there, and it would cost me about $160 a month or so with all the extra fees just to host that. But they grandfathered in the books that were created, and they are available because let me take this back a step. If the products you created on earlier releases were released with a Creative Commons license, they still host them, but you lose editing capabilities, which makes them less reusable. But there is a PressBooks site at SUNY, and we do have an Oswego instance of it because Rebecca and I have put up a guide to podcasting on it, and we can add more to that. So if you're interested in doing that, let me know, and I can show you how. That goes just a little bit beyond, but basically PressBooks is an overlay to WordPress. So it works very much like like WordPress does, but it builds in chapters and sections and footnotes and bibliography, and it basically is WordPress configured to be able to generate books without things that are not related to books. And it's a really powerful editing system. There's all sorts of other tools here, as you can see. And there's e-commerce sites for those classes in SUNY where people are actually teaching people to work in e-commerce. There's a lot of photo gallery type tools, web server statistics, context forms you can put up in all bulletin board service, for example. You can create your own FTP sites. You can do any number of things with it. And if any of these tools are not sufficient, you can download an open source package and install it directly, but then you have to do the installation. The most commonly used tool, though, is WordPress. So you're going to create a WordPress site. We can always delete it if you don't use it, or create a new instance and name it. All you have to do to install everything here, and for those of us who've been working with the web a long time, you'd have to download the software, you'd have to go through this installation thing, make lots of decisions, create a directory structure. Here, the way Reclaim Hosting has set this up and the way cPanel works in general is you click on install this application. And I'd encourage you to do it because this is the thing you're most likely to use. Now, you could add a directory, and you'd use a directory if you're going to have multiple things in your WordPress site on your server space. So if you're going to have a blog, and if you're going to have a database, or if you're going to have other things, you could put in a subdirectory, which would just add another name at the end. For now, I would say leave it off. You only really need to worry about that if you're going to be hosting an FTP site and a blog at the same address. But for that, you just add an FTP at the end or something like that. So the defaults are generally fine. And one of the nice things is, if under the default things, it will automatically update and do all the connections and updates that are needed as new security patches come up and so forth. You don't have to worry about any of the backend stuff. Installatron and Reclaim Hosting takes care of that. And I suggest leaving it as the defaults, automatically update, accept the license agreement, accept automatic updates to the plugins. You know, otherwise you're more likely to be hacked. They update these things really nicely, and they make sure they work before they do it. The one thing you may want to change is the website title. You can always do it later. You see a lot of websites out there that say just another WordPress site. Don't be one of those people. Put in a name. You could name it your class, for example, or you could name it, you know, my blog or something, or adventures in, or HSC 448, and then get rid of that just another WordPress site. You can either leave it off or put or let's say a blog or something. You can change it at any time, but it's nice to do it right away. I would suggest limit login attempts. One of the servers that I have hosted on a Reclaim Hosting site, I'm getting about 100 attempts to log in every day on average, and no one has been able to get in yet. And that's been happening for about a year. I don't know quite why. You don't need to enable multi-site. You can always change it later. What multi-site is, it lets you use the same blogging platform, the same WordPress instance on multiple sites. So if you're hosting more than one blog, you could set it up so it's multi-site. You can either create separate instances for each one, or you can enable multiple site, which allows you to have multiple sites with one instance, which uses just a little bit less storage space. But if you're only setting up one, you don't need to do it. Just click install, and within a couple minutes, you're going to have your own blog. And this is really good if you, a really common use of this is to do this with your classes so that you will have, I should have allowed more time for this. We're almost out of time. But basically, you now have a blog, you now have an HSC 448, and all you need to do, there's the address of it. If you click on, now you could create an administration account, or you could just click on that middle link now where it says WP admin, and it creates a password for you, which is secure, it's randomly generated, and as you could change it if you want, but you don't have to remember your login. You only need your SUNY login to get into SUNYCreate.cloud. Once you're in SUNYCreate.cloud, click on WordPress, click on my instances, you only have one right now, and click on that admit link, and it would automatically log you in as the administrator of the site. And then the next step would be, if you're going to use it in class, click on users and add users, or if you're just going to use it as your own, go up to either posts or pages. Posts is used if you want to have a blog with posts about various issues that just show up sequentially, and pages would be if you want a permanent web page that's always going to be there. The T for Teaching site, for example, is hosted on a WordPress site, and the pages are the things that are persistent, and they're all persistent, but the post would be each episode of that would come out as a blog post. And basically, that's all you need to do. The one thing you may want to do really quickly is click on appearance, because you can change the styles and so forth. There's a default one to choose themes, and look at the themes and find one that looks good for what you're doing. If you click on add new, you've got, you could just go directly to the 2023, which is their default theme for this, but there's a lot of themes. And if you don't like these, you can download others, and you can add plugins that will do almost anything you could imagine. There are plugins that will let you copy blog posts if you want to create a starter blog and just automatically use that as a starting point. You could add all sorts of tools to it that would allow people to upload things, that will allow you to take as an input feeds from other blog posts if you're having multiple blogs. If one common use of this is if you have each student with their own WordPress site, you could then have essentially put in a plugin that will go out and find all of their posts and suck it into the class blog. But what's probably easier is to add your students as users, give it their email addresses, and they don't need to go through SUNYCreate. They create their own account here, which they log into, and basically you're the host of their blog, and you could give yourself moderation privileges if you want. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to work with you on it. But it's a really powerful set of tools that's really, really easy to use. You know, there's a little bit of a learning curve with WordPress if you haven't done it, and all you need to do is click on that. It will install that as a style, and then you've got your blog, and you can change it at any time. One thing you may want to do though is when you're searching, you may want to put in responsive design or responsive, so that way it works just as well on mobile devices as it will on, you know, other displays and so forth. So you could put in keywords for certain things, or you could put in collections, you could put in something that's relevant. You could put in podcasts, you could put in, I don't know.
I gotta get to the 10.
And yeah, so we are out of
We're
time.
at a 10.
And but any questions? I've been talking a lot, but play with it, have fun with it. You now have your own blog, and it's free, and you can do whatever you'd like with it, within reason, until someone complains to SUNY Legal.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So well, actually, there's just one session at this time?
Yeah.
So yeah, if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to stay and play. Otherwise, you know, we don't have to continue if you want to get to the next session.
Yeah, I have to go meet with the student, but thanks, John. This is very cool. I'm ready to play with this. So thanks.
Thank you. It's a tool we never had before in this easy a way, and it's
This is awesome. It really is. All right, see you later.
thanks, especially since we lost the blogging tool.
Yes,
And-
that's a really good point.
And you could make it public, or you could restrict it to certain users, and
you know, that's really interesting. We'll have to remind me to circle back on that idea, because if you remember way back when Gardner Campbell was doing a thing where his students' blogs were, I'll say linked for lack of a better word, right? So, and I asked him, well, how are you doing that? And he told me what the WordPress plugin was or whatever it was. And I'd have to go back and think about, well, what was the value, and are there more modern ways to do that today, right? Because that was, who knows how many years ago when we talked to him about that.
it still works that way. The advantage to them, why it was easy for them is they had an account for every student already.
Okay.
So there was a black blog aggregator where you just put in the student names and or the names of the blog, and it sucked it into a class feed.
Okay.
But that requires that there be one for each person. I think we have 500 total accounts in SUNY right now, and a fixed amount of space. So if each one of the students installed their own WordPress instance, that would add up pretty quickly. You wouldn't be able to get too many instances in. But if you create a class one, you just have to add a list of email addresses for the students. They'd have to create their own accounts, but it would be an account at that address.
Right.
And they just log directly in there. And I think that's probably a more efficient.
It would be. That would be really great and so useful, like you say, since we don't have a blogging tool in Brightspace. Yeah, I like it.
I mean, there's Blogger with Google, but
I mean, I like the fact that it's within the SUNY environment, so the whole, you know, SSO thing is there, and that's great too. So, all right, I am now late, so I got to go.
okay, very good.
Bye.
Bye.